Welcome back to Next Level Rides. In this episode, we're going to be working on my buddy's E60 535. It does have a fair few mods done to it, including upgraded twins, methanol injection if you've watched the previous video here. And next up is coilovers. We're going to install this set of coilovers along with the H&R sway bars, which is going to improve the handling pretty substantial. And this one here, that's going to be an upgraded PCV system because, of course, like most N54s, it has a pretty bad smoking issue. In some cases where people want something a little bit more reliable than the very audible and let's just say F1 inspired V10 that comes in the M5s, sometimes some people want to stick with the inline six, something a little more streetable, a little bit more budget friendly, so they go with the 535. Along with the 535, the suspension's a little bit watered down, so you're not going to end up getting the M handling that a lot of people would like. It has quite a few similarities to the M5, but today's goal will be installing the coilovers, sway bars, and having this beastie bulgy boat of a vehicle handle more like an M. On first glance, I have to admit, Max Speeding Rods has come a decently long way in their build quality. It's a pretty nice unit, and on the 5 Series, it has 4 coilovers, whereas on most E chassis, the spring and the shock is actually separate from one another. Now, sway bars, I don't know the exact size of them. All I know is that this one here is way more thick boy than the other ones, and you got some upgraded, I'm assuming, urethane bushings. Along with that, one thing he's going to have to consider is spacers and the alignment after the fact. What you're going to have to do is dial in not only the ride height and let the suspension settle, but once it does settle, you're going to have to go to an alignment shop and get it specifically set for what your goals are. For something like this, he wants it to handle better than it would normally. So typically we're gonna be modest with the rear camber, and for the front camber, add a few degrees. These will have adjustable front top hats. So for front camber, typically you'll have about half a degree, 3/4 of a degree. And for this one, we're gonna aim for around the 2 mark. It's not gonna be too hard on tires, but at the same time, it's gonna handle quite a bit better. Next to zero toe in the front, typically on the rear, I'll go with a modest amount, generally half of what BMW would recommend. So about 15 thou, and should be okay. All right, let's see if I can actually show you what we're working with here. So the sway bar right there, we're gonna have to disconnect it off the subframe, and it's gonna be relatively easy to access. Right there, that bolt in the middle, is that the bolt? Yeah, that's the bolt in the nut. That's gonna be what we're gonna look to take off for the suspension, or for the factory shock. So it runs way up there, and getting into the back of the vehicle, past the subwoofer and everything, it's gonna be right up top there. So you can see the one bolt head protruding. There's gonna be 2, so it might not be too bad. Generally on 5 Series, you have to take the full interior, similar to my E30. So the seats have to come off, the rear deck lid and everything to access the bolts or the top of the shock assembly. But for this one, it actually seems half okay. So we're gonna get started turning wrenches and see what comes of it. We didn't film pulling the sway bar out, but it's a little bit tired. I don't think these are meant to be this loose. This one's Harlem shaking, but that's okay. And it just goes to show you this tiny little bar that you could probably, well, I can't bend it, but somebody can bend it. We're gonna chuck that to the side. We're gonna lift the one corner, and now that the sway bar is out of the way, coilover should be quite a bit easier. Maybe. After we take out the rear sway bar, now for some reason you need me to walk you step by step on how to take that out. This may not be the video for you because it is so foolproof. I would give it 1 out of 10 wrenches for a score. You don't need all of this, but while the flashlight kid, who is now going to be the wrench kid for today, while he starts by loosening the 2 strut bolts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through how we properly set up a set of coilovers so that you're going to be set up for success. So first and foremost, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by setting the spring preload. Now for the spring preload, it's a good rule of thumb to spin this one down. Now bear in mind, these two here are gonna be what tightens the preload. So this is the one for the spring preload. That's gonna be your locking collar, and this is gonna dictate the ride height. We'll get to that after. What we're gonna do first is we're gonna use this max speeding rod as the 0.0 or whatever we're gonna call it. For tightening it, you can let the top spin, that's perfectly fine. But the first point is to tighten it by hand as much as you can until you can't tighten it anymore. So we're right around there. Now from here, you're gonna draw a line with a pencil. So right there. And you're gonna take the appropriate coilover wrench. And from here, you're gonna tighten it 2 turns. There's 1. Now, generally, I'm trying to do this on the ground so I can show you guys, but generally you'll do this on the car, which makes it easier. There you go, 2. So we have our mark right there. It's lined up with max speeding rods. And all you do after that is put some anti-seize in here, spin the collar all the way down, 2 wrenches, lock it in on itself, and you're set. Now for the ride height, what you're gonna do is you're gonna loosen off this collar and then spin the entire bottom assembly. So you'll see it's lengthening the coilover, whereas if you spin it the opposite way, eventually it'll stop. That'll be the lowest ride height you're gonna get. And this will end up being in the direction to raise it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set them both around the exact same, so probably not the lowest, but for here you can count the turns. So if you're doing, say 3 turns for the ride height, spin the collar all the way down, give it a snug, and you're ready to install it.
I always start with the rear coilovers first because they typically end up fighting you the most. These ended up being pretty easy and pretty straightforward. You just needed to put a little bit of body weight to get the shock out of its resting perch or nest or whatever we're going to call it. Taylor helped or got in the way. I'm not completely sure what he was doing at the time. He was supposed to be doing this for the most part since he had learned a thing or two, but apparently I needed to just kind of buckle down and show him how it's done all over again.
So for this one here, you can see this portion sat against the hub. And one thing that we're noticing here is one side has a thick metal flange right there, one side doesn't. So make sure that you anti-seize this one and put this side into the hub.
Getting the coilover back into where it needs to be was a little bit of a hassle. It has this inner fender shroud that was modified to fit the M Sport rear bumper. It was a pain in the backside, but we ended up getting it sorted. But once the coilover was into place, you'll have to kind of put the 8mm bolt strategically to put this thing back where it needs to be. To get the coilover itself to sit on the hub, we needed to get Taylor to slide in a jack just to lift it so that we could end up putting the little post right inside the hub and then start to thread the 18mm bolt.
And there you have it, the 1 max speeding coilover. Let's give it a little wipe so it looks nice. It looks really, really good. Bit of a pain having to take this out or at least pull it back, but it could be worse. Now let me see if I can sneak you guys in here to see the bolt. Right? I don't know if you can see the head of the bolt. I'm gonna try and point at it. Right here. So that's an 18mm and I'm sure it has a torque spec, but we're just gonna use Guten-Tight. And the bottom of the coilover there, it slips right into the hub, right there in the center of the screen. Other than that, we're gonna mount the wheel back on, and then when it's mounted, we're gonna tighten the 13mm up top. It'll be good to go. Okay, moment of truth. What we're gonna do is clean stuff out of the way. Taylor's gonna lower it. Maybe Amila, slide over there so we can get your reaction. And just in case it goes a little bit too low, maybe I'll move stuff out of the way. Ready? On a count of 3, 2, 1. Actually,
I like that.
That's actually not bad. And it'll probably settle another, well, yeah, I would say it'd probably settle another 3/4 of an inch, ½ inch.
Now it needs spacers.
Yeah, pretty sure I said that right from the get-go. But right away, actually, let's take a peek because it's hard to see at this angle. It's a little bit lower than stock. You can see the gap, but if we roll it, it'll probably sink down another 1/2 inch. We're gonna install the other side and see what it looks like.
For the passenger side, it's going to be a copy and paste of the driver's side. The rears were surprisingly not that hard to get out. I ended up thinking this and having this mindset either to manifest good, I don't know, luck or whatever we're going to end up calling it, but it will come to bite me in the backside when we move over to the front. I'm sure somebody's going to be complaining out there in internet land of how I ended up installing these bushings. I just sprayed them with a bunch of white lithium grease and then put them onto the bar themselves. Now these rear H&R sway bars, they come with the 3 holes as you can see. What that ends up relating to is tension on the sway bar. So you can preload the sway bar if need be, but what I do recommend is to put it into the neutral position, which is the center hole, and then going from there depending on how you like or how you want to adjust your suspension and turn in. Because the end links were a bit of a nuisance to remove from the old sway bar, I decided to anti-seize everything and pre-assemble it on the floor here. When you go to reinstall it, it's going to be relatively straightforward. What I'd probably recommend is to do the end links first, have them loose, and then just twist and roll the sway bar back into place. It's going to be pretty straightforward. I really didn't need to show you how to do this. If you're doing this on one of your 535s, as soon as you look at it, you'd laugh at how simple it would be to either remove, reinstall the bushings, replace the bushings, or reinstall a new sway bar itself.
All right, we finished the rear. As you can sort of see, it looks a little bit better. So what Taylor's gonna do is start it and spin it around for the front, as we're gonna watch to make sure it doesn't bottom out on the
Oh, I don't have the
jacks.
key. I need the key.
He needs a key. He needs a brain and a key. Okay. Hey. Oh, it's like a paper.
The car's starting to look pretty good. It definitely lowered it more in the rear than we had initially expected, but just enough for us to slip off the ramp. We ended up moving to the front of the vehicle and started to take apart the driver's side corner.
So the front, it looks like we're gonna have to disconnect the end link from here, and it slips just inside of the strut. So once we loosen that bolt, it'll open up and it has a little bit of an opening in the back. And then you should be able to slide the body of the strut from outside of the hub. And then from the top strut mount here, just under a strut bar. I left the easy one for Taylor. What? I did, you're welcome. Kids don't understand how easy they got it. I'm gonna steal his goldfish. One other issue we ran into, as Taylor had noticed, is the strut bar. You can see where the 3 heads of the bolts are right there. Right in between is where, on the coilover, your dampening adjustability is going to be. So good chance that the strut bar is blocking where you would adjust the dampeners. So we're gonna see exactly if that's gonna be an issue. I am fairly certain it's gonna be an issue, but we're gonna find out pretty quick here.
As soon as we started to remove the front strut bar, we noticed that it was going to get in our way when we reinstalled the coilovers. We'll have to figure something out for that down the road, but the unanimous decision was just to remove it for now. And as I preemptively mentioned before, this is where things started to go south very quickly, and it started to put both my patience and know-how to the test. Taylor ended up loosening the bolt here that ends up releasing the strut, or is supposed to release the strut. Now, in some cases, you might need to use a strut spreader, but in this case, it was being more of a pain than anything. Somebody ended up over-torquing this bolt. I'm not going to point names or, point fingers at who it may have been, Amila, but at the end of the day, a little bit of know-how and a little bit of fire ended up starting to sort the issue. We ended up firing up the torch. I wasn't about to have this thing defeat me. And what we're trying to do here is just burn up the corrosion just a little bit so that we can spray it with Coil and that it will end up penetrating and loosen up this strut, hopefully. Giving it a couple of love taps with the hammer is what we're trying to do to break up the corrosion and to get the coil in where it needs to be. Eventually, after it marinates for a little bit, we put a pipe wrench on it and we try to rotate the strut itself left or right. Eventually, the corrosion broke up enough. I took the strut out. I was ready to throw it at somebody, but at that point I realized it would just cost me an arm and a leg no matter who I threw it at. For ride height, all I really do is just use a simple ruler and I measure in between the threads. So wherever I measure in between the threads, I'll adjust the collar just so we can have a good idea as to how much we need to adjust the entire body of the coilover. When you have it marked out, all you need to do is just turn the entire body of the coilover down into the hub, and this is going to end up dictating your ride height. Once done, just use the ratchet or the wrench that it gives you, give it a little snug, and you're pretty well good to throw the wheel back on. With 3 of the corners done, it's starting to look pretty good here. We tried to eyeball it to the rear. Now, at the end of it, what's going to happen is the springs are going to settle, and you're going to need to fine-tune the ride height to exactly where you want it. We take a bit of a breather and we start on the passenger side, and compared to the driver's side, this one was a bit of a breeze. Taylor started by doing his thing, and of course I had to step in and show the kid how it's actually done. Maybe he was a bit lazy, or maybe I just got sick of wasting my time, but yeah, I had to take over and we got it sorted. Moving on to the front sway bar, what we ended up doing is we took the weight of the vehicle off of the tires and we let the tires or the hubs themselves hang. We start by loosening the end links on either side from the sway bar itself. I believe you needed to use a 5mm Allen key or at least an Allen bit with a wrench, and once they're broken free and loose, you can start by removing the 13 mils that are holding the brackets and in turn the sway bar to the subframe itself. These were a little bit annoying to get to because you needed to use a 13 mil in behind to hold the nut, but once you ended up loosening the both of them, the sway bar ended up coming straight down. I was a little bit apprehensive that this thing would have been wedged in between like a spaghetti noodle through the subframe like on some vehicles, but surprisingly it was just bolted to the subframe from underneath. Same thing with the rear bar. We end up installing these bushings with some white lithium. Make sure there's enough lube on these and everything is clean before you go to reinstall the silver brackets for the bushings themselves. These brackets were a little bit stuck to the old bushings, so we needed to use a flathead to pry them off. Once they're off, just make sure that they're super clean and that you spray a generous amount of white lithium on them, just to make sure that the next time you end up going in there, they're not going to be stuck and they're going to be easy enough to remove. Hit it with your purse and then move on to the second one. Same thing, whack it with a closed fist and make sure you can't feel your nerve endings. And when you're done, go install it back onto the subframe, roll it forward, and then tighten the end links. Rinse and repeat, essentially in a reverse order from the way you removed it. This is the one side of the end link. I believe the nut was a 16 mil with a 5mm Allen. And these, where it mounts to the subframe themselves, these were 13 mil. So in behind it was a nut, just use a 13 mil wrench, and on the front a 13 mil ratchet or an impact. This is the same on the opposite side. I believe this is the passenger side. This one here, it was a little 10 mil nut that ended up holding this bracket onto this mount. Just remove it and save yourself a little bit of sanity because it did get in the way. And then moving over to the other end link, same thing. End link we ended up putting into the top mount. You have your 16 mil nut and same thing, another Allen socket. We are out with the 535, seeing how the new coilovers are. So far, so good. First impressions, actually not that bad. It's definitely stiffer than before, but it's actually pretty compliant. Like those bumps there would generally be a telltale for a weak suspension, just because it's more of like almost like a washboard, but there's a bunch of humps in it. For here, this isn't the smoothest of roads, but it's pretty good. After the first couple of turns, you'll actually notice it feels a lot tighter and sharper than a normal 5 Series would. I've driven a few of these and they feel like an absolute boat in water. Ironically, I've also driven a few M5s and I would say it's pretty good. It's surprisingly good when you don't end up having having the want for a V10 that's just going to shit the bed and chew bearings. I think this is a decent happy median. It's all too bad that we didn't get the M57 diesel variant in North America, but I mean, it still has an N54 as opposed to a garbage N55. A little bit harder on the brakes. Not bad. It actually stays pretty flat. Yeah, it stays pretty flat in the corner. It doesn't dip and lean over like a boat in the ocean. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. There's a little bit of a roundabout or a traffic circle up here, and the road gets a little bit imperfect, we'll say. So I figure this will be right there, a good telltale sign on how they're gonna deal with some pretty rough, uneven roads. That was actually pretty good, and that was a pretty decent wall. One thing you will notice is the NVH goes up just a little bit. So NVH being noise, vibration, and harshness, but it's not anything crazy. Normally you're not going to be driving with no music, but it's pretty good. Here's a bump here, traffic circle. Yeah, pretty good. Well, actually quite good. And a bump. It's actually really good. Yeah, that's really good. Well, I think this is a success. As with any other suspension modifications that you've done, including coilovers and sway bars and control arms, you're definitely going to want to maximize the benefits. So getting an alignment is crucial. So for anyone doing this kind of work, make sure you get an alignment done to avoid any excessive wear on your tires and to dial in the performance of your vehicle that little bit more. It will be very subjective depending on how you like the car to feel and handle. Some might want it a little more stiff, whereas some may want it a little softer and more compliant. And you can end up having it depending on the activity, if you're going on the highway or through the canyons, or if you're just on a scenic back road like we are now, you can always make them a bit softer and just dial them in accordingly. But that's all for today. As always, feel free to like and subscribe. See you guys on the next one.
What, don't buy, have a good time?
No, don't buy. That's your
Bye, have a good time! Yeah. These nuts are a nightmare to put in.
These nuts? Ha!